Scooby-Doo, Where Are You is one of those cartoons that I can keep coming back to, always making me feel like a kid again. That eerie music and those beautiful weird backgrounds stir up so much nostalgia for me that I could just put on an episode and watch Scooby and Shaggy run around some creepy mansion and then immediately watch another one. While growing up, I never even paused to think about how the show just one day stopped without any final goodbye to the gang. I just assumed there would always be more episodes, like with most cartoons back then. So, how did this little 25-episode show suddenly end? Let's find out. The show that turned fake ghosts into a formula. So, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Aired its first episode on CBS on 13 September 1969. But getting to that point was actually a pretty long process. Back then, when Joe Ruby and Ken Spears were working with Hanna-Barbera, TV networks were getting more worried about how violent and scary children's cartoons were becoming. So, without giving parents a reason to panic, they made something that was still exciting and mysterious enough to be loved by kids. The original Scooby-Doo was quite balanced in that way because, as a kid, I never really thought of it as a show that was trying to be safe. It was creepy as hell, not gonna lie. I mean, there were haunted houses, ghosts, monsters, creepy old castles, and weird abandoned places. But yeah, knowing that there was just some normal person underneath that mask helped for sure. I've got the show's formula literally memorized. Mystery Inc. shows up somewhere strange where something supernatural starts terrorizing everyone, and for some reason, Fred decides that splitting up is a great idea. So, Fred goes off looking for clues. Velma actually tries to figure out what's going on. Poor Daphne ends up in danger, and Scooby and Shaggy usually just try to find something to eat while accidentally discovering the most important clue of the entire episode. Basically, every episode would throw in a completely different monster or location while keeping the basic structure familiar, but it's that familiarity that makes me still throw on a random episode today and get sucked into it right away. But you know, the version we know is quite different from how the show almost looked. One of the earliest concepts was much closer to a teenage rock band mystery show named Mysteries 5, with the characters being heavily based on the Archie show. But then this idea was not impressive enough for Fred Silverman. The concept then went through another major change with Who's Scared, which is probably one of my favorite pieces of Scooby-Doo history because, well, apparently it was too scary. President Frank Stanton of CBS reportedly rejected it, saying, "We can't put that on the air, that's just too frightening." The original idea leaned much harder into horror, which I understand could be too much for other kids. I really wish I could see how horrifying that original version actually was, because apparently it was too much for CBS. I mean, come on. So they toned down the horror and also scrapped the rock band idea, and eventually found that sweet spot between creepy and funny. To be fair, they did the right thing, because Scooby-Doo, despite not being traditionally really scary, could still make me feel uneasy. It just found that perfect middle ground where it could give me weird monsters and that unsettling music, and then, 2 seconds later, Scooby and Shaggy doing something totally ridiculous. That is why I keep rewatching it, though, because I love how it can be spooky enough to pull me in, but goofy enough that it never becomes too heavy. Joe Ruby also had the idea of adding a dog early in the process, a Great Dane specifically, who would become the actual star of the whole thing. According to the Washington Post, Ken Spears said that as he and Ruby were leaving Joseph Barbera's office, Ruby asked, "Is it okay if we put a dog in it? Because we know Freddie Silverman likes dogs." To which Barbera apparently responded, "Sure, do anything you want." Thank God, because I really can't imagine Scooby-Doo without Scooby-Doo. Why Scooby looked like the worst Great Dane ever. Iwao Takamoto, who is the creative mind behind some incredibly recognizable characters and designs such as Astro, Penelope Pitstop, and more, deserves so much more credit for why Scooby looks the way he does. Scooby is probably one of the least impressive-looking Great Danes you could possibly design, and that is exactly what makes him perfect. Takamoto actually consulted a colleague at Hanna-Barbera who bred prize-winning Great Danes in real life to figure out what a cartoon Great Dane should look like. She explained that in order for a Great Dane to look like a proper champion, it needs to have a straight back and straight legs with a strong chin and the correct proportions. And he clearly did not follow whatever she said. He literally gave Scooby a hunched back with bowed legs, a smaller chin, and these really awkward proportions. As he put it, "I decided to go the opposite and gave him a humpback, bowed legs, small chin, and such. Even his color is wrong." It really explains why Scooby looks so damn goofy. Just look at him. The weird little hunched posture, the skinny legs, the enormous body, and that goofy face are such a huge part of why I love him. One look at Scooby's face is enough to know that this dog is terrified of everything. He actually looks like a cowardly and goofy dog rather than just acting like one, which makes the design so brilliant. There's something about his posture that makes him look like he's already thinking about running away, even when he's standing completely still. By deliberately breaking the rules to create Scooby, Takamoto knew exactly what he was doing here, and I think he nailed it. He designed my favorite cartoon dog, and I can't imagine Scooby looking any other way. Why did the original series stop after only 25 episodes? The original CBS run produced 17 episodes in its first season and 8 in its second, for a total of 25, and then Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Just stopped producing new episodes in that original format, which is kind of surprising to me because I haven't heard about any dramatic cancellation story involving a scandal or a production disaster that killed the show overnight. It's really quite fitting that the final episode, which is called Don't Fool with a Phantom, aired on 31 October 1970. I mean, if you're going to end the original run of Scooby-Doo, might as well do it on Halloween. See, a short run does not have to automatically mean that the show was a failure because Scooby-Doo had already become a successful property for CBS, and the original episodes were also perfect for reruns. The same mysteries kept showing up on Saturday mornings, and I happily watched them again and again. I never had the thought that I'd already watched an episode because it was just hella entertaining watching Scooby and Shaggy keep running away from some guy in a monster costume for the 100th time. That's why I think it's important to look at those 25 episodes as rerun machines. But then the franchise started reinventing itself instead of letting one version run forever. After the original run, CBS brought the gang back in 1972 with the new Scooby-Doo movies, and this time they expanded the basic setup into hour-long adventures with celebrity and cartoon guest stars. There were Batman and Robin, the Three Stooges, the Addams Family, and plenty of other familiar faces. This is one of those Scooby-Doo ideas I'll never get tired of because Batman joining the gang to solve mysteries is just crazy. And it ran for only 2 seasons with 24 episodes before the franchise moved over to ABC in 1976 under Fred Silverman, the same executive who had helped shape the original concept. New episodes were included in package shows such as the Scooby-Doo/Dynamite Hour and later Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics. Then the franchise started suffering from real commitment issues from 1976 through the mid-80s as Scooby-Doo went through an insane number of different versions. They would make a few changes here and there, like introducing new characters such as Scrappy-Doo, and basically try every possible combination. Remember the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, where Scooby, Shaggy, and Daphne were actually dealing with real ghosts? I mean, the entire joke of the original show is that the monster was not actually a monster. And then, suddenly, the franchise felt like making the ghosts real. Keeping aside how chaotic this era was, I have to admit it did give us some great concepts, like Vincent Price voicing the gang's supernatural guide. That was actually such a perfect Scooby-Doo idea. The 1978 material is sometimes marketed as a 3rd season of Where Are You?, but those episodes were actually produced as part of the later ABC programming and were eventually syndicated as The Scooby-Doo Show. So that explains where those later episodes come from, bringing Where Are You? To a total of 41 episodes. But if I had to pick one episode from the original 25 as my personal favorite, I think I would go with A Night of Fright is No Delight. But this was hard to choose because there are so many episodes I could have picked. Spooky Space Kook has one of the coolest monster designs. The villain in Jeepers, it's the Creeper, is unforgettable. And A Clue for Scooby-Doo is probably one of the strongest, mystery-wise. But A Night of Fright is No Delight is just peak classic Scooby-Doo to me. The setup alone is fantastic as Scooby discovers that he has been named an heir to a millionaire's fortune because he once saved the man's life, but the thing is that he has to spend the night in an apparently haunted mansion with the other heirs. Of course, 2 creepy green phantom shadows start trying to scare everyone away almost immediately. I just really love how much atmosphere this episode packs in. There's the isolated island, the stormy night, secret passages with creepy messages, underground catacombs, plus those chain-rattling green ghosts. It felt like the gang was dropped into an actual haunted house story. My favorite moment is when the gang uses that crazy trap where Fred puts together a contraption involving a fan, soap suds, an ironing board, and a washing machine. But Scooby sets off the trap too early and it falls apart completely. Somehow, they still managed to capture the Phantoms. And the fact that the Phantoms were actually lawyers who were trying to scare everyone away from their inheritance is classic Scooby-Doo logic. Even the ending makes me laugh, as Scooby does technically inherit the fortune, only for it to be worthless Confederate money. Poor Scooby. Anyway, I think a lot of the constant changes seem to have kept the franchise fresh and given networks another reason to bring Scooby back. I mean, how many times can you watch Fred build the same trap, Velma find the same clue, Daphne gets separated from everyone, and Scooby and Shaggy accidentally solve the entire mystery while looking for food? Apparently, a lot, because I'm still here watching it. Don't fool with a phantom, the actual final mystery. Let's take a walk down memory lane, especially if it's been a while since you've watched this. This is the final episode of the original run, which is hard to tell because it's such an ordinary Scooby-Doo episode. So the episode starts with the gang taking part in the Johnny Sands Dance game show at TV station KLMN. The whole thing suddenly goes dark with a giant figure appearing on the stage, and when the lights come back on, we see that Mr. Stevens, the station manager, has disappeared, and Johnny Sands is tied up. Also, the station's safe has been robbed. Now, a wax sculptor known as Grisby has apparently had it out for the station, and so Johnny blames everything on the wax phantom, which was supposedly created by Grisby. But Johnny still begs the gang not to call the police because the station is already in financial trouble, and he doesn't want bad publicity. It's classic Scooby-Doo split-up chaos from here, with Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby heading over to Grisby's place, and Fred and Daphne investigating the local wax museum. I feel like Grisby is even creepier than the actual monster. He's just sitting there talking about black magic and claiming that he somehow brought the Phantom to life. And the creepiest thing about this episode is honestly his house. The wax phantom, who is supposed to be this terrifying figure, really can't match that unsettling vibe of Grisby. To be honest, the wax phantom isn't even one of the stronger monsters from the first 2 seasons. I mean, the idea is cool, but the actual design doesn't do that much for me. For me, Grisby and his weird little world are much more memorable. The gang eventually ends up at the museum where Fred and Daphne are chased around by the Phantom before everyone reunites. They find an airline ticket to South America, which seems like a pretty important clue, and later a bag filled with stolen money is discovered by Fred, Daphne, and Velma in the museum. Then we get some classic Scooby-Doo nonsense involving a trapdoor, the absurd topsy-turvy room, and of course, Scooby and Shaggy stopping to eat wax fruit because apparently nothing can stop these two from looking for food. The Phantom finally catches them and puts them on a conveyor belt that is heading straight toward a vat of molten wax. Daphne manages to save them by reversing the belt, and after another chase, Fred decides it's time to stop running and actually catch the guy. He sets up a wax shower to trap the Phantom, but Shaggy and Scooby somehow manage to become part of the trap too. Of course they do. Anyway, the Phantom is revealed to be none other than Mr. Stevens. He had been stealing money from the TV station and was preparing to escape to South America, which explains the airline ticket. The whole Phantom act was basically an elaborate way of making Grisby look responsible for both the robbery and Stevens' disappearance. The Wax Museum setting is great, though, and the chase scenes definitely make the episode more fun. But the music has to be my favorite part. Like Pretty Mary Sunlight absolutely rules. Maybe the episode was trying to compensate for a monster that isn't quite as creepy as it thinks it is. I also really like the actual unmasking because the gang breaks apart the wax covering with a hammer instead of the usual quick mask removal. And yeah, the episode ends with Shaggy and Scooby taking wax versions of themselves home and joking that the dummies can solve the next mysteries for them. I find it so funny that if you didn't know that this episode was the finale, nothing about it would give that away. They solve the case, expose Mr. Stevens, pick up their little wax souvenirs, and then they are off to the next mystery. Anyway, I think that's the perfect way for the original series to end, as there's really nothing to say goodbye to from the gang's perspective. How Scooby-Doo outgrew its own show. I love looking at how quickly Scooby-Doo became bigger than the television show that introduced it. We got the gang, the Mystery Machine, and that visual style from Hanna-Barbera, but the characters became so familiar that they could survive almost any change around them. Like, they could put Scooby, Shaggy, Fred, Daphne, and Velma in a totally different situation, and I'd still know what kind of chaos I was about to watch. In 1970, Gold Key began publishing Scooby-Doo Where Are You comics, which was kind of the first sign. It initially adapted stories from the show before creating original mysteries of their own. Scooby was already starting to exist beyond the screen, even while the television series series was still finding its footing. Television also kept pushing the characters in new directions with the new Scooby-Doo movies, The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, and then A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, where the gang was turned into kids, which is so nostalgic for me. There's a mystery in town, so call the coolest pup around. Love that theme song. The whole red herring running gag is one of the funniest, too. Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island also famously challenged the usual "it was just a guy in the mask" formula by giving us real supernatural creatures, which really freaked me out as a kid. Later, they went in a completely opposite direction with Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated by building a continuous mythology and character arcs around the weekly mysteries, and it could get really dark. And the fact that Scooby-Doo is still getting new animated projects and movies decades later is probably the best proof of just how much the character has grown beyond that original series. Looking back, those 25 episodes feel more like the beginning of something that was always going to be much bigger than one television show. So that's how Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, or this particular version of Scooby's story, ended because, as we know, the Mystery Machine was nowhere near ready to stop, even decades later, and I'll never get tired of going back to them. Well, do you think they ended the series at the right time? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. See you next time.